This is-
Couldn't do that.
I don't know why I don't have video. Oh, so what's the difference between that and that?
What?
What am I doing with the
This here's the computer.
Looks good here.
Video. All right, so do you want to call me in order and officially get started?
Is this recording?
It's live. I think on the computer you would record. I don't think there's this just has the sound and video. Oh, wait,
Everything okay?
there's a record button.
Tonight? Well, Andrew said.
Yeah. No, I met with you.
Oh, yeah, that's why I was late, because I was in Perryville when I saw her email, I didn't know things had been. Like,
Turn the move that. Oh, it's not.
Is that it?
We'll find out.
Um,
So we're live, right? We're recording. Great. So that works. You did good. Thank you, Amy. So we'll call to order the Board of Ethics for the City of Kingston, September 5th, 2024. It is 4:11 PM. I'd ask that each of you have reviewed the minutes from the July 16th meeting. Review them and while you're doing that, if we could have, if you could say your name and who's here.
Charlotte Dennis,
Mike Decker, present.
Alan Nace. And our corporation counsel.
I'm Matt Jankowski, from the Office of Corporation Counsel, here to help assist about revising the board.
I read the minutes when we sent them a couple of weeks ago, I sent her one minor correction, so
And those are a motion to accept them as written now.
I will make a motion to accept them as written now.
Second, all in favor? Aye. The motion is moved unanimously. Now we're on to old business, which is, it says to review our existing complaints. I don't believe we have any. I think all of the complaints that have been filed have been resolved, and there are no new complaints. Is that accurate?
That is my understanding. To my knowledge, no new complaints have been filed with the City of Kingston. So there are no complaints currently pending.
So then we're on to new business. Status of disclosures in the schedule of non-compliance appearances.
Right. As I'm not aware of any receiving any new updates. So there were just the individuals who needed corrections.
There was some missing, right? that Amy had sent, I think it was 5 letters out last spring.
And she asked that I sign 2 letters tonight,
Okay,
which I did.
so we need to know.
So she will have to, I guess, update it. I don't know if you want to move on to business and then come back to
Yeah,
that.
let's.
Yeah. So the next would be the review and revision of the rules and regulations for the Board of Ethics.
Okay, so that's what Amy's copying right now, and these were Mike and I, as part of the task force, had looked, we'd all looked at the rules, but as Andrea had said, these are for us, and she didn't want to,
Right.
her feeling was, of course, that it was not up to the task force to make recommendations, but out of our meetings, things came about. So, what we'll have in a few minutes is just the original rules and regs with the suggestions that have been made primarily by Mike and myself, in terms of what needs to be added or deleted. And then, of course, there was the conversation that we did have with Andrea as part of our meeting this summer, when we talked about, where we would keep documents, for example. And that should be in our rules and regulations. So the idea of keeping them in a confidential manner on the property of the city and all of that.
But they have to stay on the city property.
Yes, they have to stay and they have to be kept in a confidential manner. And then that way we have some flexibility of figuring out where that is, but.
And I think our choices, if I remember, were the least desirable was the clerk's office and the more desirable was corporation council,
Well,
or the more doable.
the it's really up in the air, I think, because the financial disclosures remain with the clerk. Any complaints would remain, well, I guess it's really split between the
Right.
two.
I think all of our records and such, so it makes
But-
corporation council disclosure would be the only.
Disclosure with the clerk, but things like our meeting notes and those don't necessarily need to be with clerk
Well,
council.
those are on the,
Well, that's another
Website.
issue. I looked at the city website this afternoon. Meeting notes have not been updated since January 2022,
By notes, you mean the minutes?
the minutes rather. Yes, January 2022 was the last time minutes were.
is there a thought that because it's recorded that they don't need written?
Yeah, we
transcript?
always have written meeting notes, and it shouldn't be. I mean, the city school district has both the recording and the notes. They go up within a few weeks of the board meeting. Yeah,
So under public officers law, basically, the open meetings law, meeting recordings can be satisfied the requirement for minutes,
oh,
but at least since we've had Amy here as a secretary,
yes.
minutes have been taken. I don't believe there were written minutes taken when the board was lacking a secretary. I
Well, I
understand.
think some.
You did, yeah. You were the pseudo secretary.
Yeah, so yeah, I think it definitely would make sense if we do have official written minutes, that those must be posted on our website. But what was being done prior, and I know some of the other boards were doing it as well, were just doing recordings and considering them the minutes, which does satisfy the requirements.
And then, so Amy's responses would be basically the highlights of that recording.
Well, there's a meeting
Yeah, meeting
notes.
minutes, basically, the only major requirement is any kind of decision, action that's taken by the board, voted upon by the board, has to be recorded. General topics of conversation and basically, a quick blurb as to what was discussed, but beyond that.
I mean, would this suffice? I mean, what she handed out tonight, for
Yes,
example.
yes,
So
that's-
rather than having anybody rewrite, or
Yeah.
we've got Amy's
And
notes.
basically, when you guys have been approving minutes,
Yeah,
that's what makes them official, so you guys have been approving since Amy has been.
exactly. So it's
So any written minutes that you guys are approving, you are officially making them the minutes, the record, as required under the open meeting.
So the minutes that have been approved could be uploaded.
Yes.
But who does that? I mean, Amy
Well,
doesn't have access to.
Well, do you
Yes,
have copies of all the minutes?
yes.
And is there a way that they could be uploaded to?
I think so. I asked once and I wasn't sure if there was a spot for them, but I will talk to, Elise.
Okay,
Were today's minutes approved?
Yes.
yeah,
Who made the motion?
Shelley made the motion, Doug second, and.
yeah, it was unanimous there.
Wait, it's yours here. Oh, yes, it's mine, cheat sheet.
We'll get back to that, but the status of the task force review and of code of ethics, questions, concerns, and connections. We have a preliminary, at least, version of a new code. If you could look at those questions that jumped out at me from that writing, not tonight, but
But this is a good time, now that the board has reviewed the proposed changes from the task force to provide and discuss any kind of feedback, anything that would potentially want included, not included. And that way the task force can consider making any potential changes before, the board said, say, this is something we want to send in a communication over to the council.
so, like, some of the questions I have, this is the time to.
Yeah, this would be,
So there's the municipal rules book that I was able to look through, and I appreciate that. There were a number of questions that came up that I've shared, but I'll publicly share. On page 256 and the training and education, it says, and some of this stuff is right in keeping with what that would be preferably would be an annual training on ethics for municipal officers, employees, and officials. And the failure to complete trainings may subject them to sanctions, including suspension. And those falsely reporting subject to sanctions up to and including discharge. So that was a question that
So is your question about enforcement?
well, these are things that were suggested in that, these are a group of experts in this area.
Yeah.
And I thought that I would be remiss to not bring them up and discuss them.
Right. But we have training in the code, so what part of it is the question?
Well, they're saying that, the employee sanctions or official sanctions
Right, because they put the sanctions is the question, should we be imposing sanctions?
on that.
did you want to go through?
And that they review and sign the code, that they reviewed the code of ethics prior to filling out the disclosure. And that in our trainings, our education, and they say, and I know this already, keep it interesting for them so they don't fall asleep there, because it is important. Like New York City issued that one-page guide, and that's something that I know that you've been working on developing, and appreciate that.
We will be.
Next, they had waivers. So they say you can grant waivers except where it would violate Article 18. And the code prohibits conduct that, in fairness, ought not to be prohibited, and in fact does not constitute a violation of ethics, even if it appears to. And one example that came up was a complaint against a person who worked for another entity, school systems or something, and worked also as for the city, an employer, an official. And there was complaints about that. And as a way to preempt that they grant some waivers that would make that, if a complaint was filed, that would be an initial review and an immediate consideration that it does not fall under. So that was one of their suggestions. And they use an example, a New York City employee wished to teach college that conducts business with the city. And he has they have no vested interest in the school or the city business, other than that they're teaching a class.
And we have a number of, a lot of elected officials, right, carry two hats, so that's
Right,
pretty common.
right, so they call that like a moonlighting waiver that says, they can do that. They can't, they're not allowed to work, any of that work to be performed during the regular work hours, which is, commonplace. Then on page 265, it says, ethics board should have the powers to impose civil fines and other sanctions. The municipalities should not enact an ethics law unless they are prepared to grant the ethics board enforcement power. That's on page 266 in there. So that's a question, is what does that mean? The power to, and the prior ethics board did in fact assign the fees, a $6,500 fine or civil fee to someone.
And I am reviewing the code, and I believe that this is from the original, this is a proposed new code, but I believe this remains unchanged. Subsection, this is under 49-8. Subsection. This is 49-7, subsection A, civil penalties. And the board can assess the civil penalties, but further disciplinary action, it looks like that would be
Up to the,
imposed by the city, Kingston.
or the governing body, whatever.
Governing body, the appointing authority, or by the authorized.
That's the
But civil penalties is an action that
That
you
this-
guys can assess.
Right. Next was one that was always pretty touchy. To promote the reality and the perception of integrity in government. And by preventing unethical conduct before they occur, rather than after the occurrence. And so the perception of integrity is important. And again, we run into the perception, whose perception?
You mean the appearance of impropriety?
Right, and they use the term perception, but it is that appearance and according to whose perception, and so I don't know the answer to that. I just have the question that we've had before, and
We have, and I've done some research on that now, because I know that was a big concern of yours, and we had a lot of discussions. In fact, it's one of the points we're going to address tonight in the public hearing or public information session. And there are cities that have. Janet,
Hey,
how are you?
Hey, how are you?
I'm good.
I'm just making sure he has his keys.
I do, thank you.
So it was interesting, I was reading about model codes and how the cities that have decided to employ that concept have run into some trouble and have like a huge body of advisory opinions, because it's really hard to make something like that stick, and it makes a code, they use the expression murky. And so you have, again, what is the appearance, what constitutes the appearance, and then the whole reasonable man standard. And so I read this afternoon a lengthy article that came out of Michigan, Law Review, and essentially the authors of that came down, it's 20 pages long, and I can't cite the whole thing, but it really ultimately they came down with, after reviewing decades worth of case law and instances that they could not defend in an ethics code, especially using that as it weakens the whole code, because you would be arguing forever What is reasonable? Reasonable assumes that everybody knows the facts. Well, how do we know that they knew the facts, that they knew everything to know about the facts? What is the appearance? How do we determine that? And so it opens up Pandora's box. And ultimately, a code is only as good as it has teeth, and it can be applied reasonably by a board. And so we had, the task force, we had discussed it with Matt, we had discussed it amongst ourselves, and felt ultimately that it's not enforceable in our opinion.
But you did address it under the purpose
Under the
that,
purpose.
just so that
Yeah.
this is being reiterated to anyone the ethics code applies to, that even the appearance of impropriety should be avoided by public officials. and
That's
employees.
right, whereas should as opposed to under
Must.
conduct
Shall.
and what shall be.
An actual violation.
Yes, exactly.
So it should be, so it's okay if there's an appearance.
They should make every effort to avoid
To
it,
avoid
but it's
it.
not, if there's an appearance, but it doesn't actually exist, that's not in and of itself a violation. But these officials should be making efforts to avoid the appearance.
So that might apply in cases where someone, a resident of the city, files a complaint against someone because they truly believe that this person is acting in an unethical manner. However, that behavior that they're stating and complaining about, even if true, doesn't fall under our code.
Because it's on, here's an example that I read. So a city employee, for example, is collecting funds from her department for an event. And if she puts the money in her wallet, she's always done it that way. There's all accounting, it's accounted for, no money is missing. It may have the appearance of impropriety. Somebody sees her, says she's put it in her wallet, but everything's accounted for. It's probably not best practice, but she's not actually violating.
She's not acting in an unethical manner.
That's right. It just has the appearance, and we're asking people, as Matt said, and the purpose of it is consider how you're doing things, and that before you do them, think about how that will look, putting the money in your wallet. It's probably not a best practice, but it's not punishable under the code. It's not an actual violation.
Okay. I'm asking the question just on the record, so that it's,
Yeah.
we've had this discussion and it is public. And on page 389, they have a conclusion in this area, and it says it's high time that the general municipal law 18 be revised and clarified. And I don't think anyone argues with that. However, that's not anything we can do.
Nope.
That's different page right there. But until then, the local municipalities should exercise the authority granted to them by the general municipal law 806 to adopt clear standards. And so that brings us to our hope for clear standards that will not only be understood by members of the ethics board, but with some of our brief educational activities, be understood by the general public. Because that will foster, that can help foster more trust in the government, because if complaints are made to the clerk's office and they come to the ethics board and there are no findings, people get upset and think that we're not doing something. However, the reality of the situation is it often doesn't fall under the ethics code, and/or doesn't meet the requirements or have been addressed in case law at some point. I understand people feeling that way. It's just that there's nothing that, and I think that's why, that's the main reason that I was asking for the review and
And I think, you know,
consideration for revision if they want, or clarification if they think that they don't.
and I think the things we worked really hard on, the task force, is really reading it and does this, you know, can we make it, you know, can you write it in plainer English, like the purpose? We redid that. And it's much more simplified, much more less legalistic sounding. Our definitions have clarity. There's uniformity in terms of what our definition is for a family and a household, for example, compared to that it matches the financial disclosure, which it didn't before. The complaint form, which we finalized here, again, the intention is clarity, transparency, ease of use. And I think, you know, that I think we've achieved that. And again, it doesn't mean that it's a permanent document. Every code should be reviewed in 5 years. We'll see if it needs more or less, depending upon what comes up. Right?
It'll need a review.
It'll need a review, and, you know, you make a really good point about enforcement, and we already have the enforcement in there, as Matt pointed out, for, you know, the financial disclosures, and if people are not meeting that. I think the enforcement of the educational piece doesn't sit well with me. We have really good attendance, and I think we're trying to change the culture, and if it becomes immediately a punitive thing, we're making an assumption that people don't want to do this. And I think based on just this first year, compliance was so good. Let's keep it that way. And then maybe in 5 years, when whoever's on the board wants to review it, and people are dropping off, they're not getting training, we're getting more complaints, that would be a good time to say, well, maybe we have to enforce this in a different way. But I know you've always been concerned about people thinking that we're, you know, mean, horrible people. And I think that if we put enforcement in or punishment in for not showing up for a training, it feels heavy-handed to me. But that's just my opinion.
Okay. Any other members have anything to add to that?
Yeah, we were against mandating it, training, so.
You don't want to mandate it. So it'd be a voluntary,
It's our responsibility to,
well, it wouldn't be an orientation, it would be a requirement. And it'd be part of their orientation, you'd have to do that.
that would only work for employees, which is only part of those required to fill out disclosure, be familiar with the code, so.
It's really hard for us to actually force elected officials to,
Mhm.
you know, do anything. And they're really, you know, yeah, there could be potential, maybe it's something that the city council should consider making certain mandatory requirements, certain types of, not only the ethics training, but other types of training as part of what they do every year. Again, that would be, you know, we could, all right, the ethics board could potentially make a recommendation to them that as part of their yearly, that they require all elected officials attend the yearly ethics training. Something of that nature, where we're not statutorily requiring in our code, but making it council so that they can hopefully include it with their general requirements for elected officials. That could be kind of a middle way there.
That almost better coming from that, and this is part of your elected responsibility.
And it's legalese, but if you have an opportunity to review that section,
Yeah.
it would be wonderful. I think it was page 256. as I was reading that book, I said, oh, no.
Did you read that before you went to sleep or after? Yay for you.
Oh,
That was.
yeah. No, there's interesting sections in it.
Sure,
I said, no, this is, now I have to ask this question.
of
Yeah.
course, of course. Well, again, it's the origin, right? It's, why we're here. Even if it isn't updated. While Matt's looking at that, can we ask, about, any missing, how many missing,
Oh, we didn't get that, did we? And missing financial disclosures. Let's see.
Yeah, what's, do you have the notes as to,
Well, there were the two that went out, or going out very late to members of a particular board commission.
Mhm.
And I don't know if anybody else is missing.
So were others sent out?
I'm sorry,
Were others sent out?
all of the others were sent, everything was sent.
and then there were subsequent ones
That
that,
had to be rectified and they
Yes.
were.
Oh, so all the corrections were made?
Yes.
Wow, okay, that's great. And then there were just a few missing.
Right, and I will,
Look tomorrow.
look tomorrow and I
Okay.
will send you all an email
Sure.
with an update. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Because you may need to, whatever the number is, 1 or 10, give them an opportunity to come here.
Right, we would want to meet with them at this point because they would be way over there. If they're past 30 days.
And moving forward, that part of our educational thing is I hope to reduce or eliminate that because
Yeah.
people may not be aware that I know they're supposed to, but not really,
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. But that's terrific that all the corrections were made, so if there's just some missing, they're not very many.
No,
Okay,
We have that.
It's in the minutes,
The names, no. No.
the numbers.
no,
The numbers.
Oh, I don't think that's in the minutes.
we had 7.
May minutes.
We had 7 last spring that were either missing or needing corrected.
only a second.
I think so.
In July?
Before July, because, I know you sent out letters and you called people and.
Right, and those are the ones who corrected,
Yeah,
Each and every one of them?
to my knowledge.
Okay, if you could let us know, because
yeah,
I will.
if they have not corrected as of yet, then
then it's been, definitely been over 30
Yeah.
days. Anything that Amy sent, I know that it was in June.
Right, well, there were the 2 that you came in that I had to resend, so he just signed them.
Great,
And,
okay. All right, so we'll get an accounting on this, and if
Other than that-
we'll schedule a meeting and meet,
we'll figure it out then.
and we'll figure it out. Well, good. And
So-
thank you to who put the current complaint form up on the website. That's exciting. I checked that.
Did I do
It wasn't us.
Okay,
I don't know if it was you, but it wasn't me.
so that's cool. But here's the thing, our rules and regs does not appear under, so you have the ethics code, you have a complaint form, you have the annual disclosure on the website on our little page. There's no rules and regs link.
Do you want me to
that
get
would
that?
be,
I have to Google
Yeah, it would be
it.
good to have them there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I have to Google it to find it.
They were there.
So you
They
want,
have been,
Really?
yeah, they, I don't love the website, but,
You have to do it from a computer, though.
I did for my computer,
I don't know
yeah.
whatever.
Was it a laptop?
No, a big desktop.
oh, you gotta get a laptop.
I have a laptop too.
Phone.
If Amy can.
That's what it is,
Look
right?
up the website right now and look right now. It does not appear on, you click on boards and commissions, ethics board. And then it has the links to, ethics code, complaint form, financial disclosure, no rules and regs. And then the meeting notes that stop at January 20.
I don't know why the others are, I will send her, I will resend. Yeah, you're right, so the only thing is, so rules and regs need to be put up on,
Right, and we're looking at the
We're looking at
revision
it,
thing right now.
Once
well, should we
do.
wait until?
Yeah,
Yeah,
All right, so you'll tell me, you'll give me the
Yeah.
green light when you want me to submit.
well, you'll know where we are at the end of the night.
Oh, okay, at
So,
the end of the public hearing.
yeah.
That's just an educational.
Okay, so you'll know.
To get more, I'm guessing, to explain more to the public and get feedback.
Yeah, yes,
And
it's
then
not
that
a,
feedback will be further processed by the board, and ultimately, the task force revises what they're proposing, bringing that back to the board. And then the board would ultimately be the body that is going to make a recommendation of changes in a communication to the common council.
right, and then it goes through the process of the common council. And the rules and regs are internal, so
Right.
they're what we decide and vote on.
so we passed over them initially because they were being printed,
Yes,
but,
they're hot off the press.
we can revisit them now.
Okay.
So for the Board of Ethics rules and regs, the purpose,
So nothing had come up about that. That is the original purpose.
does
So,
anybody have any suggestions or any desire to discuss or change anything there? Or can we move on to the scope? I will take the absence of
mhm.
words to be a move on, right? All right. So to establish the meeting agenda. Okay. Call to order by the chairman of the board, yes. Next is the question, the pledge.
So these two items, B and C, were in the original rules and regs. And so I don't even remember who raised them, but the question is, do we need or want to say the pledge? Do we need or want to say a moment of silence? That's up to us. I don't know if there's city rules and regs that are behind that. Mike, I know you had a strong opinion, and so,
Yeah, we were following, actually, you modeled the common council meeting, their agenda,
okay.
we did this, so they do the pledge and silence.
Mhm.
I'm not stuck on the silence, but I think any official body
Should do the
government
pledge.
should do the pledge. We never reported a flag in most of our rooms, so that's always been a problem.
Can we do the pledge without a flag? What's the technical, does it,
We could.
You could.
I mean, ideally, you have a flag and you face the flag or whatever.
You can pull a picture of the flag on the computer.
there you go.
The digital flag would be fine, you know.
Right.
Is that something that people wish to retain?
I want to respect, you, Mike's position as a member of the US military. I don't want to be disrespectful. So I don't feel like I'm the one who should.
It's not me, this is military, it's just us as citizens.
Right.
Well, I have different opinions about being a citizen in the pledge, but that's personal. I feel like out of respect for you, and other members, who are defending our
You don't
country.
have strong feelings.
Huh?
Yeah, so it sounds like you don't have strong feelings whether.
No, I mean, that's right, I don't have strong feelings. I guess what I want to say is that if somebody in this board feels it's very important to them, I want to honor that.
And I do too, and I have feelings about the pledge, and they're not as strong, but I find that gives it some purpose, and, unless there's a motion to remove it, I think it would stay. Is that general thoughts?
My general thought is that it's, longstanding tradition, and I see no reason to.
Okay. So we're keeping the,
Pledge.
okay.
Okay, so what about moment of silence?
Fallen public servants. Does anybody do that? Does any board?
I'm not aware of any board, but again, I don't attend the common council meetings.
I have it listed, I don't know if they do it. But I'm not.
You know,
And really, but this is coming through via our meeting agenda, you know, you go through the agenda and call it over, stand up, say the pledge. You know, you can just say, now a moment of silence, it can be 10 seconds of silence, it could be, if you wanted to leave it in there, there's nothing that's saying, you know, any length period of time, or you guys can remove it altogether.
So we could have
It's really,
a moment of silence, which doesn't mean a minute. And it could be for everybody, for anybody, it wouldn't have to be for fallen public servants. And, it could be up to whoever's
yeah,
chairing, I guess,
yeah.
or whatever the makeup of the present board is.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, because a lot of people are losing their lives right now in this country due to gun violence. I mean, having
Right, gun violence, substances,
substances.
you name it, there's enough stuff going on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we could amend it,
they just say a
strike
moment.
a moment of silence,
Yeah,
and then the roll call is yes, and minutes, yes.
Just 1 second before you go, there's a note up top, it
It's the
says,
same like,
yeah,
what is that?
name of the document. Is this directed to me?
On the city, it looks as though it's.
so maybe that was removed because that was something you had noted, Mike, and I put that note in there.
So the,
But we don't even have it on the city website.
Right, it
It's
is
not
on the city
website anyway.
The one thing that I can say is I've had so many like issues with the city website where I'll get to a board's information from one way or another way, and then sometimes there'll be certain things,
Yeah.
sometimes other things aren't listed. So there might be another way where, you know, they're going through, you know, and we will see it, but here I don't see it.
Yeah, I even looked
Just
under
going
forms,
forward.
and under forms, it doesn't, documents and forms, I couldn't find it. I actually did a Google search.
I've seen this.
Kingston,
definitely was on
Oh,
there.
we got it from somewhere.
No, we made it.
We made it.
Here, and then it was posted on the website.
No, I know I got it off the
and
website.
it exists on the internet right now, just not attached to anything on the website that is.
So when we finalize this, we want
It is
to,
out there.
It is out there on the website, not on the website, it's on the internet, which means that there is some
A link.
it
link
exists on
somewhere that no longer appears on the web.
So once we finalize our review and revision,
Yes,
we're the revisionist here.
yes.
Once we
Yeah.
finalize this, can you make sure that it gets
Yes.
posted on the
You
site?
still need to give me the final copy,
Yeah.
We'll do that.
because I don't want to send and say, oh, no,
No.
just another.
So the minutes of the meeting, the motion to dispense and file by the secretary.
So A, B, and C, those I added based on our meeting in July. So just see if that language is what we intended, but that's,
Actually,
E, I have questions.
once regular, where it has minutes only goes up to 2022. Here I found posted ethics minutes for November 2023. And you know, it's August 2023.
where are you seeing this? Because I couldn't get
Yeah,
down
the
to
site
it.
is-
See that either.
Yeah, no, this is a pull down, and that's what I mean, that the city as a whole, the website,
It's
depending on how
So
you go, you can
inconsistent,
find.
there's no uniform.
No, it's very difficult to navigate, even if you know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
At least I found that. So E, can you read that?
The G,
E,
B,
E.
E
is
as
an
in
echo.
egg, elephant.
oh, minutes of the previous meeting and motion to dispense that one? And filed by the secretary in a confidential location on City of Kingston property in a manner determined by the Board of Ethics. So that was also, that should have been bolded. That was also, I think, a revision from the original, but
Wouldn't it be that we would we be voting on accepting the minutes?
Right.
That is
So I
not-
send them
that is-
ahead of time.
That's not what was originally written.
Because I think we would need to,
Right, so I send them ahead of time, sometimes you get to read them, sometimes you don't. And if everyone has read them, someone can make a.
but
motion to
here
dispense.
at this meeting,
Right.
we have to review the minutes.
Also, I guess technically the motion is to dispense with a further reading of the minutes.
Well, does that have to be in the agenda? I mean, that could be
Yeah.
spontaneous, because you
And
might
to be
not
honest,
always want
most
to
boards
dispense.
just, it's required that the boards get that basically,
This is the one.
read and, so you might want, and this is the rules basically saying that this is what our agenda is gonna say. So you could just make that similar that,
What was it?
consideration of the minutes of the previous meeting and vote
Approve,
approving.
dispense, or read.
What did it say?
It used to say minutes of the previous meeting and motion to dispense and file by the secretary.
Oh, then that is from the original, that's why I didn't hold it.
So you will always dispense.
Yeah,
the
but
reading.
in confidential, all that other stuff.
That's new, yeah.
That's no. And I don't think we should state that there. I think we should state.
Because the minutes are not
They're
confidential.
not.
They're going to be posted.
Oh, yeah.
What is
So-
the original? What is the original?
So we need to strike that, right?
Yeah,
Hold on a second.
something to that effect should go in where we store it.
And do we need to say that we vote?
Oh, yeah, there
Well,
it
this is
is.
just
Yeah.
basically saying what the
Okay.
agenda is.
Well, is
So
it
you can-
motion to dispense and approve?
Yeah. you
Yeah,
would-
the original just says, right, minutes of the previous meeting and motion to dispense and file by the secretary.
And
That's-
approve or amend?
Well, dispense does all of
But
that.
again, for the purpose of this,
Well,
this is
dispense
just
is
saying
nice.
what the agenda is.
Right.
But so I would, addressing the minutes of the previous meeting, you can just leave it as simple as that the next thing after roll call is addressing the minutes of the previous meeting. You know, 'cause we're
Is
just,
you writing that in a legible fashion?
Uh,
As
Previous
opposed to mine?
So just minutes of the previous meeting.
Address.
that you're
address,
addressing the.
minutes of previous meeting, and that's it.
Everybody read the minutes, oh, no, we didn't.
Okay, so that's it for E, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Then F, communications and disclosures submitted to the clerk. Motion to dispense and file review disclosures.
this seems repetitive, doesn't it?
What's that?
F,
Motion, communications and disclosures submitted. Yeah, and this is basically just establishing what you're going to be addressing on the agenda, so you guys can simplify this.
Mm-hmm.
You don't necessarily, so that you're going to address, have there been any communications or?
so just address disclosures.
Yeah, so you can even just, I would say,
Strike A. and
strike
just-
A, just leave it as F. And
And then G is complaints submitted to the city clerk. And then we have A, B, and C. Are these additions?
Those were additions, if I bolded them, they were additions.
What does the term dispense mean?
Process.
I-
Whether we.
Like-
Yeah, how
That's-
you're resolving it. So basically, you're either,
Make that
approve it
and then approve the amendment.
again, because this is just establishing an agenda, I would try to keep it as broad and simple. So if you're addressing communications and disclosures first, then, or you can even separate that, have we received any communications? Have we received any disclosures been submitted, have that as a separate thing. And then complaints, addressing complaints, have there been any complaints submitted? If there's complaints, you move forward addressing the complaint.
So you want the F, G, and H?
I'm just saying that to me, you're just establishing what the meeting agenda is going to be.
So listed separately, so have we received disclosures, have we received?
So
complaints?
communications, then
first.
disclosures,
Okay.
then.
But is
Sorry,
okay, so
sorry.
disclosures and complaints, is that under communications or after, and it's a separate item?
It could just be a bullet with those, I think, under,
Well,
The
it's like under
communications
that.
are more broad. It can be
Request for
other things
advisory.
other than disclosures.
So,
You know. I don't, like you could make the disclosures and the complaints subsets to.
right, it's not, do you want that under?
Or you guys can just, you guys can put in different annual disclosures or complaints, other communications received. Or, you know, and that can include requests for advisory opinions, or you can make that separate. Have there been any requests for advisory opinions? No.
because this agenda isn't the one that we have to put up each month.
But it should be the order in
It
which
should be.
all this stuff, so this should have all these things listed, and then when there's new stuff, okay, so here's, you know, communications, here's, you know, complaints, here's, you know, these other things, so they should reflect the agendas that reflect this meeting agenda that you guys have adopted. So you guys can make it even, just change it so it goes.
So community,
Just old business, new business, you know, that kind of thing. I think just to be comprehensive without getting bogged down in details, separating, you know, the main things you guys deal with, annual disclosures, complaints, you know, requests for advisory opinions, and then other communications, and you have that under new business or something, have we received any? And then you go to old business, and then if there's already some outstanding stuff that you want to address.
So then F would be new business, and under new business would be communications,
Yeah.
disclosures, complaints.
That makes sense, and we don't need all the motion stuff
Yeah, you
there.
don't need that information.
Yes, and then what's public speaking, that's what.
that doesn't, we were told that public speaking for, and an ethics board is not.
It's not generally appropriate, but this is a public hearing, or not public hearing, a public body, it's a public meeting. They can come in, and if somebody does want to
Speak,
talk to the ethics board, I imagine you can allow it, but it's generally not, you know, if they're talking about specific complaints or matters,
they can't,
that is not.
that's right, so,
So it wouldn't be public speaking.
right, so probably not something,
That you would
You
necessarily
need to
want in
put
the
in.
agenda, but it's something that you can allow during.
And we have allowed,
yeah,
but it doesn't, you know, we don't have a public speaking period. We're gonna have to have.
There's no public hearings on complaints or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. right, then we go to executive session if needed.
Is that under G, or is that going to be under new business? Because I have new business, and then I have 1, 2, and 3, communications, disclosures, complaints.
G with the complaints.
Is that under new business?
And the recommendation,
And
yeah, but you can also address it, so I would have all those things listed under new business, so when you guys come in, you discuss, here's our agenda, okay. It's, are there any new complaints? No, there haven't been any new complaints. Were there any new, you know, annual disclosures that were filed? Oh, yeah, we have
Right,
15 new,
right.
and then.
So that's
you know,
all under
were
new
there-
business, and
And you
then,
can say,
where do we define new business, old business?
well, it's not
It's
on
not
here.
in here, because this was following the old, we didn't even think about.
Or
So
it's
all
here.
these rules of
Old
business
business
in here, under section 2, is you're just.
Oh, yeah, on the other
This
page.
is what the agenda is about,
Right.
so.
And this has it, the old one has it, old business first, and then new business, but we do new business, well, we do old business.
No, we do old business.
We do old business first, and then,
Right, any existing,
yeah,
so you want to do old business first?
I really do.
yeah,
yeah,
so we do old business.
then new. Yeah, which is the way it is here, it's just, you have, the way this was loaded up here, this is got lots of stuff that doesn't really,
Yeah, not
Yeah.
necessary.
All right, so what, actually makes copy.
Because ultimately, whatever you guys approve here is going to be what comes up here.
Right.
And then anytime there's actually something within any of these categories, it'll be written on here.
Right.
It's basically just whatever the
maybe I'll
format's
start a
gonna
document.
I'm sorry?
with these. I'll start something with these revisions and share it with everybody and then share it with you. We can use our collective brains to do that. How's that?
So under old business in the meantime, would you want
We could have,
existing complaints or?
we could go with a simplified version. I mean, we don't,
Yeah,
how complicated we're gonna make, like with this agenda that you posted, it has the call to order. A roll call, I wrote in pledge after that. Then a review of minutes. Then old business. And then we had review existing complaints. I also wrote in review existing disclosure issues. And then other. Because I was like an other because of
Yeah, right.
something comes out of the blue. And then new business. Disclosures.
They're not old or new. They're standing bullets that we do, boom, 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 boom. We get the old business, that could be everything else. Right?
Yeah,
Well,
But
anything else.
I would say, you know,
Right?
Well, it's old business. If we've had complaints that we haven't resolved, we've listened, we've heard the hearing, we're gonna have more hearings, it's still going on. It's not new anymore.
Right.
That would be under old
or we've sent out
letters for
letters for
disclosures.
disclosures and we're waiting on it, that would be under old business, whereas somebody gets hired and they haven't yet filled it out, that would be
So
new
we want to
business.
pull it out of this then and make it
Yeah,
categories.
but we don't need J, report findings and actions, that doesn't,
According to who?
reporting to who.
well, if it's, generally we do make a record, let's say you guys have just reviewed in executive session,
Oh.
a complaint, you
Okay,
come out of executive session and you report those.
okay,
We give the number and say.
yeah, you're right, yeah, okay. And then adjournment, so we can simplify this big time to reflect, to look more like this. Okay,
So after new business adjournment,
mm-hmm,
do you want to include, set next meeting date?
well, we don't always set the next meeting date because,
No, we have to have 2 a year. So we don't
Oh,
necessarily
okay.
have, we,
we
I
sometimes.
don't know of any year that we had just 2, but, you know,
Yeah, it's not like a regular.
we're required to have 2. And then we have them when they're needed, within a reasonable, whatever that reasonable time is. That would
Well,
be the perception again.
the suggestion here was we'll include setting a new meeting date if needed. This is a reminder, right?
Yeah, we may, you know,
Right, we may, if we're in ongoing, like when we were looking at the advisory, request for an advisory opinion, that went over a couple of weeks, we needed to set something up, or, you know, we may know in January that we want to set up a meeting in late February to March to review the first batch of annual disclosures, so just as a reminder.
and then adjournment,
Mhm.
to make it as simple as possible. We good with that?
So I'm not putting in a new meeting date. All right, yeah.
I don't think,
New
I don't think
meeting,
it has to
no.
be on
Alright,
the
so it's not
outline for
on
the
the-
agenda,
But
but
we
if
can
it's
do it.
addressed in
Rules and
business, then
Okay.
you can say, okay, you know.
Yeah, we can do it at the meeting.
Because we have this,
We're gonna meet next Tuesday at 4:00.
But it doesn't have to be something that
It's a standard on the
is standard
agenda.
because it's not always addressed.
So are we good with our
Scope.
scope?
So, yeah,
All right. And are you marking up a final copy of that? Is that what you're?
I am, and I know Amy's working on it, so I'll
collaborate?
We'll collaborate,
Good.
yes.
We're good
Right,
collaborators.
good collaborators, good. So then we move on to responsibilities. Meeting, minimum 2 meetings a year. I would think that they would be reversed, that the first one would be report to the mayor and common council by January 15th, and then number 2 become number 1, number 1 become number 2. Cut and paste, kind of. That makes sense?
Sure, why not?
Just so there's, I want order here.
Okay.
Prior to January 15th?
So just reverse 1 and 2. So
Yeah.
I got that. So in other words, Alan wants to see that
We
we
typically do that
compile.
in December.
Well, we did one or 2 years in December. Usually it's done first week of January or something. We're meeting. And then that brings up the question, do we need to meet in January to do that? Or, because that's listed as one of the meetings on here. Or that meeting, if it were held in December.
We've usually met, in the last 3 years, it's been December. We've gotten it all together and then.
Well, it almost has to be.
And then we just
To get it-
finalize
To
it.
get it finalized and to the common council and to the mayor by the 15th.
So then why do we have to meet in December in order to compile for January 15th, meet in December?
Or, yeah, I don't know if we want to put meet in December because we may then end up meeting in January, but to meet, to compile that report.
Okay, I don't think it matters.
And then we'll have other meetings throughout the year, so we'll more than meet our 2.
Okay, so we'll just reverse those dates, that'll make you happy. Okay,
Sure.
no, that's easy.
All right. The Board of Ethics will request from the city clerk to wait no later than January 15th, an updated and accurate list of all, all right.
You know, the purpose of that, of course, was to,
For the disclosures.
yeah, I don't know that with the original, let's see. I don't think that was on the original, but it's sort of like this has been, yeah. The problem, of course, has been that we have not been getting an accurate list.
Right.
And Amy ran around and got us an accurate
Right.
list, but it's not her
So
responsibility.
it says we will request one.
That's right, we'll see if it happens.
Then would that request go from us to the city clerk or to you and then you get it from the city clerk?
Well, I mean, I think it really should come from the chair,
Yeah, and then the requested,
Why are,
because it says the board of
why are we
ethics.
doing this?
Well, it just says we'll request. We have
It's in
to
the
add,
code.
it's in the code, but I just think it should be in our regulations as well. Why not?
well, they have to supply it, right, in the code.
Well, the other thing that is you have to just make sure that whatever procedure you're establishing for filing a complaint is consistent with the code, because the code is,
Right,
you know, this is just an internal reg for the board, so it can only address what is within the board's purview.
right.
And obviously it can't be contradictory, so if there's a procedure for filing a complaint listed in here,
Well, this is for
If-
filing.
like I'm just saying the thing that jumps out.
No, this
And
is.
you guys can reiterate that, but I just want to make sure that,
Yeah, this is not for a complaint coming out, this is for the annual disclosures.
oh, you're talking, what section?
So responsibilities, 3D.
Okay, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead on that 4. All right, 3B, we request no later than each year an update accurate list.
And you're saying it doesn't need to be in there because it's in the code. That they have to do that.
Annual disclosures. Level two. Maintenance of annual disclosure, city clerk shall update and maintain a current list of all employees required to file disclosures, shall maintain all annual disclosures submitted and reviewed by their.
Could be available. So basically, it addresses that these have to be made available, but it does not
Doesn't give
necessarily
a
say
date.
when you have, it does say when they have to have them submitted, the people who, are subject to the filing. So
And that's
this is
February
basically saying that
15th.
you guys should request, and, you can change that date, like obviously the wording here is no later, so you can always ask earlier, but basically you guys are imposing, procedures in which you guys are going to be subject to and should be following. It's not really a penalty for not, but you guys should be following it. So not only this board, but any future boards, while this is still in effect, should. So is that something where, the January 15th date is that the date in which?
Yeah, I know.
the-
Well, this
I don't know if we need a date.
Well, we do need a date because, what's been happening is people are turning their disclosures in and we don't have an accurate list. So without a date, what's the point?
What is the actual date that they have to turn? in?
February 15th.
So
So we
I don't
can-
think it's pointless kind of for you guys.
Yeah, that's for that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sure.
We can't get it.
That's
We
true.
can't get
So
it in.
I would say,
We get it.
Why do we say February 15th?
now, here's the thing though, as I'm reading this,
Mm.
this is looking for, the update, it's a list of people, but I guess new individuals could come onto that list between February 15th or January 15th and February 15th. But I think it makes sense for these things to be consistent with when they have to submit them. But would you want it no later than February 15th? If there are, we all know that there's gonna be probably more submitted on February 15th than any other day prior to it. So maybe you might say, by March
This
1st,
list
no
has
later.
to, this list has to be enduring, it has to go all year long, clerk has to maintain it, it could change at any time.
But between the first week of January and the first week of March, that's when.
So if we have this requirement that that you guys are looking to review them no later than March 30th, then you would want that list prior to your review. So again, maybe, March 1st, and then,
In 2 weeks.
and the other thing too is, technically this is saying review all annual disclosures by March 30th. Do you think realistically, or maybe kick that date back a little bit? I don't know if these dates were based on other dates that were in the code previously. Or,
I don't even remember about the dates, but I think we have to have a date. I understand.
Yeah, I don't think that the review of all annual disclosures, no later than March 30th, I don't think that works.
That's pretty late, 3
Well, it's pretty early.
3 months.
no, they're submitted, they're supposed to be submitted by February 15th. So
And then it goes 30 days.
5 days to schedule a meeting, to get and review everything that's been submitted.
wrong?
It's too late.
So you're still holding the employees or the
Employees.
commissioners?
Yeah, the employees are.
February 15th.
They have until February 15th.
Statute.
We need to start.
Where
looking
they're
at
just creating
by
their,
the 15th.
their
Right
procedure for
afterwards, we
review.
would start looking at those. We keep letting this go later and later every year.
No,
Well-
we make it earlier and earlier every year. We were in December some years, it was, years ago, it was bad. The March 30th, a problem with that is, you have to have the meeting and you have to have,
Gone through all
It's just a requirement that one of our meetings must be on March 30th to review. That's all it's saying.
To review all of the disclosures.
That's just holding us not going beyond March 30th to review. There's nowhere in the code says we have to review them at any given time.
No, but the point is, okay, you're right. But what advantage is there to us as a board? We're telling people that they need to get their annual disclosure in by February 15th. If we don't set a date to review those, and they're already late, how are we assessing that?
Right.
So in other words, let's say we don't meet till April. Then we're already, somebody hasn't turned it in, they're now March, April, they're 3 months late. What's the point of saying you can't be more than?
But you
have to get
also
it in?
don't need to meet, to have a meeting of the board
No, we don't,
to review.
but we can't work with those disclosures until we have an accurate list. And that's what happened this year.
So, but that's a different,
No,
the
this,
list is
That's,
different.
yeah, that's the different one. So that day would be earlier than whenever you guys review all the, you want the list prior to reviewing that.
we want the list, right, by March 1st.
So we want the list by.
I want the list today.
Do you want to say the list or
Well-
give it the actual date of the February 15th?
Yeah, I mean,
That you'll request from the clerk?
yeah, it should be.
The list is, and to Mike's point, the list is available.
It needs to be, whether it is.
Whether the list, I'm assuming the list is available because it must be available for each of these listed people.
Right.
And we've
That's
addressed
not,
that
it's
point
not the disclosures.
in our annual
It's just a
letter
list of who has to file it.
to the mayor. We've
Right.
addressed that point
Right.
specifically.
I know,
So maybe we need to write a letter just on that to him. To have the city clerk's office perform their required duties so that we can perform ours.
I mean, technically, the list should be available.
We keep binding ourselves to other dates and things.
I know,
It's not gonna make them do their part.
I know, but the list should actually be available when the clerk sends the
It
notice.
should be available today. It should be available today when we got a complaint that's now with a new officer.
Right,
I should be able to go over there and request it
That's right.
today. We need this for our meeting agenda tonight because X, Y, Z is in front of us.
and I do think, but in terms of internal, we do need to review no later than March 30th, preferably earlier, because again, the longer.
That was our initial thinking, it's just to make us.
Saying like there's no, like you guys can do what you have done where there's no quorum and you're just getting them and reviewing. This is
Mhm.
saying that at a minimum, one of the two meetings needs to be no later than March 30th for the purpose of
Right,
coming together and reviewing.
yeah,
Uh,
But we
We've
don't
always done the
need to
stragglers, the ones that we popped in on our own to do the stragglers.
that's right. But ideally, right, we should start looking at those right after the 15th of February so that we can stay on top of it. Because.
That's our intent, we're just not binding ourselves
Yeah.
in case.
But you don't want it to list something that you're not able to do.
Right. I
You
think
might be on
in
vacation,
good faith, I think we do that
there's
right.
snowbirding or something.
If you're gone for 2 weeks and we couldn't meet,
Yeah,
but
so March 30th sounds fine, I would, yeah, I mean, ideally, I'd like to start looking at those as soon as we.
well, we do.
Yeah,
Well, we
and
can.
we don't have to have a meeting for that.
Right, we can come in and look and review them.
Yeah, you can come in and look at them, but then.
But it's
really-
easier, in my opinion, I think it's easier that we have a meeting for that purpose.
Right.
Because honestly, there's only two things we're charged with, reviewing disclosures and
Right.
filing a letter
Right,
at the end of annual report. So that's why and 2 meetings. So we kind of stemmed them around that. And we can always add.
right,
They do, yeah.
but in terms of then, we're still stuck with the request from the city clerk, I hear what you're saying about, like, we shouldn't have to put that in our rules and regs, it should be updated, but, again, we're thinking about future boards and what do they need to know? And what should the public know? And I just kind of feel that the more we have it in writing, the more useful it is. And,
So maybe that we'll request that the city clerk provide the ethics board with an updated and accurate list no later than January 15th. People been putting the responsibility
uh-huh, On the office.
on that office
Whoever's
to
running,
make sure that they have sent us that.
because that office, as of January 15th, needs to have an accurate list, because that's the list they're basing off.
And
what
Mike's,
they're sending it.
and Mike's point is that this list should be maintained accurately all along. You only have one assistant, where you have the assistant corporation counsel. Who is that? You have a city clerk, these aren't jobs that people switch necessarily
Right,
every 30 days, 90 days,
Right.
These are
okay.
long term.
So
It's their
leave it January.
responsibility too, when they come in to sign their oath, that they get a copy of
Yeah,
that.
right.
So we have about a half hour left.
So leave January 15th.
Well, but reword it that the clerk will
Maintains
provide.
accurately, will provide. Okay, good. So the clerk will
But
provide.
again, we can't, the clerk is bound by what's in the law. We're saying are what the board
Right,
can do. Like, we can't basically say, well, the clerk needs to provide,
yeah, so we have
it's
to
that we
leave. it-
request, that's why it's worded in that way, that you're requesting from the
Yeah,
clerk.
okay, so leave the language.
Because these are just rules and regs that
Yeah, we can't tell her.
govern how the board conducts its business.
Okay,
Each disclosure be reviewed by 2 members. If it's incomplete, a letter sent by the Board of Ethics Secretary outlining the necessary remediation, and the applicant be given a 30-day extension or 30-day grace period, or something along those lines.
So you have to say 30 days from the review, right?
Or 30 days from the date the letter is sent.
we'll get a letter, and then they're given 30 days. That's what it says. A letter will be sent outlining what needs to be done, and they get a 30-day extension.
But if you tell me you're giving them a 30-day extension now, I say they have until March 15th. Because their deadline was February 15th.
Yeah, but it has,
But no, but-
we may not meet, that's the
But we're
problem.
not going to meet until March.
So 30-day extension from notification.
We do it on March 30th, which is April 1st, so they have until May.
From notification. I know it's from notification, but that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, then of course, they'll be 3 months out of compliance, but unless we're
There's nothing
There's
more
nothing
we
we
can
can
do.
We can't hold them accountable for the first 6 weeks because we don't.
correct. Yes, that's why we don't want to.
No, we don't want to do that, but
No.
we can't restrain ourselves too much. That's all.
No, so that's why it's 30 days from notification.
So, city employees, volunteers, elected officials required to submit disclosures who do not submit by February 15th will receive a letter from the Board of Ethics Secretary notifying them they are out of compliance. And will be given a 30-day extension before further action is taken.
So, to me, that means that on February 15th, the secretary reviews the list for completeness and sends out letters.
But that's a responsibility.
The Board of Ethics is empowered by the city.
Right?
Okay.
We're the ones who have to determine that. We can't depend on, that's not the secretary's job.
Exactly, so that's why we can't say that.
What's the section? C,
CD,
I say employee volunteers required to submit.
So we're granting a 30-day waiver, basically, in our rules and regs.
Well, there's the rules and regs have to reflect what's in here, and I know there's certain date periods. Where it's disclosures, what subsection is that?
it's at the end.
We can save some time and do some gap fill for,
What was it?
we can save some time and do some gap filling for the
Yeah, so the review of the list of disclosures, if you determine that's sufficient, notify the person in writing, and provide the person with 30 days to cure. Okay, so that is
For 30 days,
practice of this, just that on February 15th, we have not submitted, city employees. I would just change the wording, not that they will receive it, but that the Board of Ethics Secretary will notify them in writing that they are out of compliance. So instead of saying that they will receive it, but who do not.
So the will notify is not holding us.
So basically, participant by February
Will
15th
be notified.
will be notified by the Board of Ethics Secretary in writing that they are out of compliance.
So starting February 16th, those letters go out?
Well, it's saying that who do not submit by February. Yeah, so it's not giving you a date with which you have to do that, but
We
just
have
that
to-
when
we
you
have to
guys
do
review.
that.
So
you
it
do
would be,
first.
once they make the determination,
Okay.
Right,
yeah,
No, it won't be February
then
15th.
no,
you will send those out. So there's no requirement, but just reiterating what is already in the statute that,
And then C is Board of Ethics is empowered by the city of Kingston. Ethics Code will be determine additional action as needed if the 30-day extension is ignored.
that's what we wanted that ability to decide how to handle it.
Okay.
Is it ignored or is it not met?
Comply with.
yeah.
What's a better term?
Yeah, I would just, determine additional action as needed if the requirements of whatever the subsection have not been met after the 30-day extension or something like that. We'll determine additional.
We're gonna have 10 minutes before that meeting. We only have 20 minutes left.
No,
Maybe not.
we have to have a couple minutes, because we don't have a leader anymore, we don't even know what we're doing, because we don't have. Hey, Carl. Andrew was.
Oh, speak of your new leader.
Yeah, and he thought we finish up here at 5:30. Hi,
You want me to?
no, it's a,
No, no.
we're public.
Public,
Hey,
So-
Carl.
So next would be the D, the ad hoc meetings will be scheduled as needed in a timely manner as possible to review and handle complaints and requests for advisory, yes.
So I just,
How are they notified now that their complaint has been received? Well, they bring it in, right? They file it with the city clerk,
what was that?
complaints be notified, complainants be notified on a timely manner their complaint has been received.
Yeah, so this is basically saying that Board of Ethics will send out a communication. And since you're saying that these are through, how you guys are going to regulate your operations, it would make sense saying similar language that the secretary to the Board of Ethics will notify the complainants in a timely manner that their complaint has been received, something of that nature.
And then they'll be notified if additional information or interviews are requested. Once the determination is made, complainants will be notified in as timely a manner as possible.
all right, I'm gonna suggest something that we wrap it up in 5 minutes, because we did think we were gonna be done at 5:30. Carl, we have to prepare for this, people are showing up. I'm not comfortable going into a public meeting, not knowing what I'm doing, or what I'm saying, or what any of us are saying, we have to completely
but maybe we should move along on this quickly.
Well, I hate to rush through this because we've got E, F, 4, I mean, there's
Well,
4
why
pages.
don't, so we've already got, a lot of it addressed. Why don't you guys, with what is remaining, any
Start
kind of
a
suggest-
draft that can go back and forth.
Exactly.
Is that okay because it's not in public session? Or we're just doing a draft and then we would present it at our next meeting? Would that be,
Well, I would say write down any suggestions pertaining to that, and then again, come back.
come back and do another? I don't want to rush through this and I feel like I'm too distracted. There's a lot here. I feel like we've gotten through a lot of it, but we could spend another hour on the rest of it. I don't think it's,
Maybe we'll meet after the public meeting.
I've got another meeting.
Okay, are you going to be at the public meeting?
Maybe he'll,
Yeah, we'll discuss, I'm fine if you guys need me, it's kind of like with
Yeah,
Andrea. and,
Or you need me.
yeah.
So,
You're a backup.
Do we want to set another meeting date?
no. Is there is everyone okay
Well,
with?
I think it would probably be appropriate to see what the task force has to say after this public hearing, because there may be additional changes based on public
Meet for that.
discussion, and maybe they'll say, well, based on, this person said something really,
Yeah,
important, that maybe we should address this, and then, so they might have a new draft changes to the actual code to submit, and then you guys can review it, in addition to reviewing additional changes under
So-
the regs.
So then is there a motion to adjourn this meeting? Second. Favor? All in favor?
All right.
It's adjourned at 5:36.
Is there a way that I can get because I'm a space cadet, I came down without a draft of the ethics of the proposed code, is there a copy that I can get hold of?
there
I
are,
believe there are.
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.